So I'm getting a head start of 2025. I was going to make this the first book review of 2025, but that's not going to happen. I may spend the rest of the year doing some book reviews. I'm still on the fairy tale series. I just let myself down a little bit and got sick and got a little bit behind. That's not an excuse. So we're going to start with this book review here. Eddie Brown's Beating the Odds. If you know Eddie Brown, he's one of the top 10 richest black Americans in the United States. He was born in Apopka, Florida, to two teenage parents, a mother who left him with his maternal side and a father that wasn't there when he was growing up. And if you read the book in his own way, he found forgiveness with both later in life. Really early on in life, depending upon how you look at it. You'll need to read the book. If you haven't read this book yet, then I suggest you not watch this video, because for each of my book reviews, I'm going to give the 5 pieces of things that I want to discuss per book review. Okay. So, on the screen soon, you'll see the 5 things that we're going to discuss. Before we do, I have to say, I was amazed at the little things we have in common. I'll give an example. Because of how he grew up, probably with the outhouses, Eddie Brown doesn't like porta potties. I've done maybe 2 to 3 porta potties my life, and 1 compost toilet, and the compost toilet in the last porta potty I did it for me. Because the thing about it is, there were times when I didn't have a choice, and every time I've gone in them, in my opinion, they've been disgusting. But there's a park out here with a compost toilet, and I gave it a try once. Soon as you get in there, you can see at the top of the toilet other people's pee pee boo boo in the toilet paper. It's like it's composting, and I was sick as a dog trying to get through, hurrying up and peeing and getting out of there. Too much information, but to this day, I can still see the visual, and it made me sick to my stomach. And when I go to that particular park out here, I won't go to the toilets there. I have no inkling about dealing with that anymore. It made me sick to my stomach. So we shared that in common. So the 5 things you see, right? We're going to discuss them actually in backwards order. I wanted to do that one with this one. In the future, I'll discuss them all in front order. I just thought this was interesting, so I want to get right to it. Because I just finished reading this book last night, and I just found it so fascinating. Last night, FYI, is 25th of August, 2024. You all won't get this for like probably a little while to like early September. Okay. So let's quickly run down the 5 things I think about this book, and I hope you all will go read it. His story is inspiring, okay? It's really about a man who went into one field. I forgot what field. I didn't write all that down. I wrote quick notes. And by the time he went for his MBA, was already a happily married man with at least 1 child, changed his mind and decided to go into finance, which, if you know, black Americans at that time, there were not many of us represented in that field in the United States. So without further ado, we're going to go in backwards order. So the 5th point, the immediate family support of natural talents and gifts. So again, Eddie Brown mentions an uncle that he was helping out as a little boy in Apopka, Florida, do some pretty interesting things. And there were incidences in the book where while he understood his uncle's flaws, his uncle, like his maternal grandmother and grandfather, supported him through every step of the way. And without a mother and a father to raise him in those first few years, some kind of way, his uncle, his grandmother, and his mother grandfather and grandmother, managed to see his natural talents. We all know that a two-parent stable home gives you that type of stability more than anything. But he couldn't control his childhood and the circumstances that surrounded that. Naturally, when teens are parents, there's a certain amount of development that hasn't happened yet, and so it's very hard to parent when you're that young. The point is I think that his family recognizing certain talents when he was a little boy in Apopka, Florida, set the foundation for the person he had become. And he's evidence, this book, if anything, that even without being raised by your mother and your father while they are still alive, because let's face it, when a child loses their parents early in life, they can take that. Because the thing about it is, if you passed away, you can't control that. It's when they're alive and they don't choose to be in your life actively is when it can get a little bit sad. If you have a niece or nephew right now that you love with all your heart, let this be a lesson that you can instill those kind of values into them, okay? Because without his mother and father, his grandmother, grandfather, and uncle still allowed his natural gifts and talents to show and gave him that room to succeed. It was sad that his grandmother never lived to see him even graduate high school, much less college, and become the man he is today, because she got sick and went on into the next life. His grandfather, I think, saw a little bit, and so did his uncle for a while. But that fifth step is important. Please, please understand your children's natural gifts and abilities when they're younger, because that is the foundation for what they'll become later. Help them build a foundation on bedrock and not quicksand. Number 4, the discussion about post-racial society. This is one of the more important ones that if I ever become a parent, and I couldn't agree with him more. He recalls in the book, because he has 2 daughters, one Tanya and one Jennifer, of how he and his wife made a consolidated effort to let it be known that although they go to primarily white schools and lived in a primarily white neighborhood, he harbored no illusion of the racial tensions in the stratosphere in the United States, and that the girls still needed at that time a sense of access to their culture. Even in the book, they went to a primarily white church, but once a month they went to a primarily black church to give those girls that experience so that they could have enough exposure to black people to understand the nuances of black culture rather than the one-sided stereotypes that were put on television. And that's the best thing. And he said something really profound: when you lie and try to tell your children they live in a post-racial society, when they get old enough and go off into the world on their own, it will breed bitterness and resentment because you did not tell them the truth. And they'll have to reconcile on their own that you protected them in a way that they didn't ask to be protected, because you felt that because they had a different financial circumstance that you had no need to discuss it. But being black in America carries certain connotations, and you have to sit down with your children and have those conversations. Number 3, the ideal of having success and living through your children. If you read the book, for a while, his eldest child, Tanya, showed a affinity for finance, whereas his youngest daughter, Jennifer, let him know early on, I don't have any intention of taking over Brown Capital Management in the future. At some point, after getting all that education, Tanya set the family down and said she'd like to go and make her living in art. And I love the humanity that it crushed him that his own daughter had decided, after all that education, getting an MBA at Harvard, that it hurt him that she had changed her mind, but that he loved her enough to let her pursue what she wanted. And I think we can get so caught up in starting a business and living through our kids that we don't realize and conceptualize that sometimes what we built isn't meant for our children. And they don't do it to hurt us. You know, I don't have kids. I'm just talking in that sense. But he humanized himself in this form, because he at that point never pushed his daughter to do it, but then had a little bit of high hopes once she did, and then she crushed him by saying she changed her mind. Which means when he goes away, a man that he considers his son will run Brown Capital Management once he passes away. Now he has 3 grandsons. Here's hoping they'll show some interest. And I know one of his son-in-laws, at the time this book was published, also works there. So here's hoping that at least one of his 3 grandsons will have an affinity for it. You can build something and put your whole heart into it, and even have a child that shows an affinity for liking that thing, only to find out that they really want to go and pursue other things. Be okay with that. Be okay with the fact that you're going to build something and may have to leave it for someone else. Even that part of the book was hard for me, because if I were ever to have a kid, ideally I want at least one or all of them to have some involvement in a legacy. So I understood his humanity in that. This one, number 2, is going to be the hardest one. And this is where I wholeheartedly disagree with him fundamentally. Doesn't mean what he's doing is wrong. If you all have read Beating the Odds, you know that a white benefactor, a white lady of significant money at the time, and he never found out who she really was in life, paid his whole tuition and his whole way through Howard University. Every year, like clockwork, in that whole 4 years, just like pop, 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 the tuition would show up, and he never had room and board, never had to worry about it. That taught him several things: that a person cannot be your race and still empathize with you, and that there are people who are charitable and actually don't care, because he never met this white lady benefactor. He just had an ideal of who she was, but I don't think he knew her name. And he had made it his mission while still at Harvard that he was going to pay it forward. So what happens is that now that himself and Sylvia are very much established, because I found him and his wife on an interview before I even read this book, where it says, well, people say pick yourself up by your bootstraps. You have to give them boots. I think he likes to have a hands-on relationship with people that he helped from a charitable point of view. And there are people who are curious that you donate to, that want to know who you are. He said he can't be the type of person to write the check and walk away. Here's where we fundamentally disagree. I can be that person that writes a check and walk away, and let me explain why. The other side of that coin is when you help somebody. You have to be careful about approaching them after you help them, because it could give off the appearance that you're throwing it in their face. Years ago, I was somewhere, I won't say the incident, so I'm going to make this as vague as possible. When I was growing up in Alabama, where there was a group of people that helped somebody, and I overheard the conversation about how the person gave to that person charitably, and then while giving the money, put them down in private. And I can remember thinking, you're a sick type of person. How can you give money to someone, then sit here and talk trash about them? That doesn't really make any sense. Okay. I'm the type person, for me, and I say this for me, but I realize he did something a lot of people would want to do. Me writing the check in the future and walking away is my way of saying that I gave this to you and you have no obligation to me. You have to take that blessing however you take it and go pay it forward how you do. The benefactor that helped him, I think she was correct in just giving him the money and walk, because the human part of me knows that's exactly what I would have done. There are things, and I brought it up in a video by accident, that I do for people now that the people who benefit from it don't realize it's from me, and I like it that way. We're fellow Americans. All I care about is your health and your well-being. And if you live to see another day, and if you're healthy and thriving. I'm not saying that my ego can't be squashed and that I can't give money, meet the person, and not throw it in their face. What I am saying, though, okay, is that, at least in my opinion, I see the other side of that coin, where a person can be nervous of the fact that you gave them something and then you want to see them. Because it's like, are you going to give me some speech? Are you going to tell me how to live my life? Or are you going to throw it in my face? If someone gave me something and I found out it's legitimate, I don't need to know their name. But they may know something about me and about my character, and that's the reason they did it in private. That's just how I prefer to handle charity. Just give it off to you. So much so that when I get receipts talking about add this to your taxes, I don't do it. Because once I gave it with my whole heart, it belonged to that person. I don't need to claim it as a tax write-off. Not saying I won't ever do that in the future. It's just right now, it's just not something I prefer to do. I'm just that person. I'm going to hand off those things. I'm going to write that check, and I'm going to stay as private as possible. Because I need you to know that I did it from a place of doing the right thing, and that I don't need you to think that I did it because I need to be in your face. But again, some people are out there with their charity, but you have to be careful of giving the appearance of showing off. The last one's really gonna hurt. He brought up how Brown Capital Management between 2004 to 2007 lost a lot of clients based on bad decisions that they made as a whole, and he understood. And he likened it to the ideal of New Coke. If y'all can remember, right, Coca-Cola changed its formula to try to outpace Pepsi. I think this was the late 90s, early 2000s, or maybe it was the 80s. I don't remember, and it failed miserably. Because Coca-Cola Classic is one of those things, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. There are some American classics we just don't want people touching and making brand new. And when that Coke formula changed, Pepsi got the hegemony because lots of Coke fans were just not amused with it. But what is Eddie Brown trying to say in his book about New Coke? And how he managed to link it to Brown Capital Management. See, this is what I took from it, and I know he's a busy person and won't ever watch this. I admire that he did the one thing that I'm just now learning how to do at 44 years old, and that is to accept failure. See, the reason black people stay in their cocoon and really don't want to start businesses have nothing to do with the fact that you think that there's going to be people out to get you. You are afraid to fail. because of what happened with the history of our people. I understand failure's not an option. That's what you tell yourself. And I think while that's an admirable stance to take, failure unfortunately is an option. I had a failed blog called Let's Talk Race, etc. Nobody really visited but one friend, and even she got tired of its failure and quit visiting. Even now, as my channels are doing pretty good, she still won't visit my channels now. Hardly. So, the point about it is they tried this new thing and it failed. You can't be afraid to step outside of your box and try new things, though. You just also have to know how to read the room and know when not to move on certain things. And I'm fairly certain that a lot of us foundational Black Americans don't move. It's because the fear of failure paralyzes us. That is what New Coke really is. Should I or shouldn't I not move? And that's what I took from beating the odds. This wasn't going to be a book review where I was hypercritical, okay? This is one of those things where I took life lessons from it. And again, here are the life lessons one more time so that you all can see it and see what I took from it. I think this is a great book to read. I won't put ratings on my books 1 to 5 stars, but if I did, I would give this one 5. Not because I think he's a billionaire. Not even that. It's just, this is an excellent read and it's indicative of the typical Black American experience at that time up till now. I think you all should read it, and it gives you the trajectory of how he started his business, where his ideals came from, and more than anything with his wife Sylvia, to have that person up till now at your side, assisting you, helping you every step of the way, even when that person did not fully agree with you at the time and had their skepticism. I don't believe in the American dream. I think it is a myth that makes you think something that isn't real. I dream of doing and not dreaming. And if anything, I'm not dreaming of doing. Let's just start doing and stop dreaming. All right, that's just my review. It's not the best review, but it's what I took from it. Please leave your comments and go get you a copy of this book. Thank you all. Have a good day.